I went from blowing out birthday candles to searching for my missing husband, all in one night. One moment, my family was laughing around the kitchen table, and the next, my world turned upside down. My husband vanished without a trace, leaving me and our daughter with nothing but questions and fear. The police had no answers, and rumors started to swirl. Suddenly, I was not just a wife and mom, I was the only one left to hold our family together. My name is Anna, and I still remember the sound of Mark's laughter echoing through our kitchen that night. It was my birthday, and I had spent all week planning a silly surprise. Balloons everywhere, a cake shaped like a giant sunflower, and our daughter Emily hiding behind the counter, ready to jump out and yell, "Happy birthday, Mommy!" Mark's eyes sparkled when he saw it all. He laughed so hard he nearly dropped the cake, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. But now, every time I think about that laughter, it feels like a memory wrapped in shadows. I didn't know it then, but that was the last time I would ever see him. After the candles were blown out and Emily was tucked into bed, Mark hugged me tight. He whispered, "You always know how to make me smile, Anna." I smiled back, not knowing those words would haunt me. Later that night, I woke up to an empty bed. At first, I thought Mark had gone to get a glass of water or check on Emily. But the minutes ticked by, and he didn't return. I called his name, my voice shaky in the dark, but there was only silence. My heart started to pound. Where was he? Why hadn't he come back? I searched the house, every room, every corner. His shoes were gone, but his phone was still on the nightstand. The front door was locked from the inside. I checked the backyard, the garage, even the street outside, but there was no sign of him. It was like he had vanished into thin air. I tried to stay calm for Emily's sake, but inside, I was falling apart. What could have happened to Mark? Why would he leave in the middle of the night without a word? The next morning, I called the police. They asked questions I couldn't answer. Did Mark have any enemies? Was he unhappy? Had he ever talked about leaving? I shook my head, feeling more lost with every question. The police searched the neighborhood, but there were no clues, no witnesses, nothing. It was as if Mark had simply disappeared. The days turned into weeks, and the whispers started. People in town began to talk. Some said Mark had run away. Others wondered if something terrible had happened. I tried to ignore the rumors, but they crept into my mind at night, making me question everything I thought I knew. Emily was only 6, but she understood more than I wanted her to. She asked me every day, "When is Daddy coming home?" I didn't know how to answer. I told her the truth, or at least part of it. Daddy is missing, but we're doing everything we can to find him. But inside, I was scared. What if we never found him? What if he never came back? The police kept searching, but after a while, they stopped calling as often. The case grew cold, and I was left with nothing but questions. I replayed that last night over and over in my mind. Was there something I missed? Did Mark say something I didn't understand? I started to wonder if I really knew the man I married. Was he hiding something from me? Or was I just desperate for answers that didn't exist? Every birthday after that felt empty. I would sit at the kitchen table, staring at the spot where Mark used to sit, hoping for a sign, a clue, anything. But all I had were memories and a growing sense of regret. If only I had noticed something was wrong. If only I had asked more questions. But it was too late for if-onlys. As the years passed, the pain didn't fade. It just changed shape, turning into a quiet ache that never really went away. I tried to move on for Emily's sake, but every time I heard laughter, I thought of Mark. Every time I saw a sunflower, I remembered that last birthday. And every night I wondered, what really happened to my husband? Why did he vanish? And would I ever know the truth? The years after Mark vanished felt like living in a story with no ending. Every morning, I woke up hoping for a new clue, a phone call, or even a dream that would tell me where he'd gone. But the world kept spinning, and I had to keep moving for Emily. She was my anchor, the reason I got out of bed, even when the weight of not knowing pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. But the questions from that night never left me. They followed me everywhere, whispering in the quiet moments, was Mark alive? Did he leave us on purpose? Or was something much darker at play? People in our small town started to look at me differently. At first, They brought casseroles and kind words, but as the months dragged on, their eyes changed. Some were filled with pity, others with suspicion. I heard the whispers at the grocery store, saw the way neighbors paused their conversations when I walked by. "Maybe she knows more than she's saying," someone once muttered, not realizing I was close enough to hear. I wanted to scream that I was just as lost as everyone else, but I kept my head down and focused on Emily. Raising Emily alone was harder than I ever imagined. She missed her dad every day, and I could see the questions in her eyes, even when she didn't ask them out loud. She clung to the hope that Mark would walk through the door any minute, and I didn't have the heart to take that hope away. But as she grew older, the hope started to fade, replaced by a quiet sadness that broke my heart. I tried to fill the empty spaces with love, but there were some things even a mother's love couldn't fix. My best friend, Sarah, became my lifeline. She was always there with a cup of tea and a listening ear, never judging, just holding space for my pain. But even Sarah had her doubts. One night, after Emily had gone to bed, Sarah looked at me with gentle eyes and asked, "Anna, do you ever think Mark just left?" The question stung, but I couldn't blame her. I had asked myself the same thing 1,000 times. Was I holding on to a ghost? Was I refusing to see the truth because it hurt too much? Every year, when my birthday came around, the memories of that last night came flooding back. I tried to make the day special for Emily, but inside, I was falling apart. The laughter, the cake, the sunflowers, they all felt like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve. I wondered if Mark was out there somewhere, thinking of us, or if he had started a new life, leaving us behind like a chapter he didn't want to read anymore. The not knowing was the hardest part. It was like living with a wound that never healed, always raw, always aching. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit by the window and watch the streetlights flicker. I imagined Mark walking up the driveway, smiling that crooked smile, ready to explain everything. But the driveway stayed empty, and the silence grew heavier with each passing year. I tried to move on, to build a life for Emily and me, but the past was always there, just out of reach, pulling me back. I started to wonder if I was missing something, some clue, some sign that would explain it all. Was there a secret Mark had kept from me? Had I ignored warning signs because I didn't want to see them? The question circled in my mind, never letting me rest. I wanted to believe that Mark loved us, that he would never leave us by choice. But doubt gnawed at me, making me question everything I thought I knew. Emily grew from a little girl into a teenager, and the void her father left behind grew with her. She became quieter, more guarded, as if she was building walls to protect herself from the pain. I tried to reach her, but sometimes it felt like we were both lost in our own worlds, searching for answers that never came. I wondered if I was doing enough, if I was strong enough to be both mother and father, to give her the life she deserved. But even as the years passed and hope faded, I couldn't let go. Something inside me refused to believe that this was the end of our story. I kept searching, kept asking questions, kept holding on to the possibility that one day, the truth would come out. What if I was right? What if there was more to Mark's disappearance than anyone realized? And what would happen if the answers I found were more painful than the questions I'd been living with all these years? The years kept slipping by, but the ache of not knowing never faded. I tried to be strong for Emily, to fill the empty spaces with love and routine, but the questions about Mark's disappearance haunted every quiet moment. Sometimes, I wondered if I was the only one still searching for answers. Maybe everyone else had moved on, but I couldn't. Not when every birthday, every sunflower, every echo of laughter brought it all rushing back. I was stuck in a story with no ending, and I didn't know how to turn the page. Then, one rainy afternoon, everything changed. I was folding laundry in the living room, the TV humming in the background, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a split second, my heart leapt. Could it be Mark? But when I opened the door, it was a stranger in a suit, holding a folder and wearing a serious expression. He introduced himself as Detective Harris, and the way he said my name made me feel like I was stepping back into the past. "I'm reviewing some old cases," he said, his voice calm but curious. Your husband's disappearance stood out to me. I think there are some things we need to look at again. My hands shook as I let him in. I had learned not to get my hopes up, but something about the way he spoke, so certain, so focused, made me wonder if this time would be different. Could he really find something everyone else had missed? Detective Harris sat at our kitchen table, flipping through his folder. He asked questions, some I'd heard before, but others that made me pause. Did Mark ever mention anyone from work who made him uncomfortable? Did you notice anything strange in the days before he disappeared? I tried to remember every detail, every conversation, but the years had blurred the edges of my memories. Still, I answered as best I could, feeling the old pain mix with a new, cautious hope. Emily came home from school while Harris was still there. She was taller now, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, her eyes sharp and searching. She looked at Harris, then at me, and I could see the questions in her face. After he left, she cornered me in the hallway. What did he want, Mom? Is he going to find Dad? Her voice was steady, but I could hear the tremble underneath. I realized then that Emily was no longer a little girl waiting for her father to come home. She was a young woman, desperate for answers, just like me. That night, Emily sat on my bed, her knees pulled to her chest. I want to help, she said quietly. I need to know what happened to Dad. I can't keep pretending everything's okay. Her words broke something open in me. For so long, I had tried to protect her from the pain, but maybe what she needed was the truth, no matter how hard it was to find. We agreed to work with Detective Harris, to dig into the past together, even if it meant facing things we weren't ready for. Detective Harris came back the next day, this time with a stack of files and a determined look. There are inconsistencies in the original investigation, he explained. Some things don't add up. I think we missed something important. He showed us old reports, timelines, and witness statements. As we pored over the details, I felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. What if we really could find out what happened to Mark? But what if the truth was worse than anything I'd imagined? Emily threw herself into the search, reading every file, asking questions I hadn't thought to ask. She was relentless, her need for answers burning brighter than ever. I saw so much of Mark in her. The stubbornness, the curiosity, the refusal to give up. Sometimes, I worried she was getting too close, that the truth might hurt her more than the mystery. But I couldn't hold her back. She deserved to know, just as much as I did. As the days passed, Harris uncovered small details that had been overlooked. A neighbor who remembered seeing a strange car parked near our house the night Mark disappeared. A bank statement showing a large withdrawal from Mark's account just days before he vanished. A phone call from an unknown number that was never traced. Each new clue felt like a piece of a puzzle we were finally starting to solve, but the picture it formed was still blurry, full of shadows and secrets. One evening, Harris sat across from us, his face serious. I think Mark's disappearance is connected to something bigger, he said. There are patterns here, things that don't make sense unless someone wanted him gone. My heart pounded as he spoke. Was Mark in trouble? Had he been hiding something from us? Or was he trying to protect us from something we couldn't see? Emily squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with determination. We have to keep going, Mom. We're closer than we've ever been. I nodded, feeling a surge of hope and fear all at once. For the first time in years, it felt like the story was moving forward, like we might finally get the answers we've been searching for. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the truth, when it came, would change everything. As we dug deeper, I started to wonder, what if finding out what happened to Mark meant uncovering secrets I wasn't ready to face? What if the answers we found tore our family apart even more? And what if, after all these years, the truth was something I never could have imagined? The questions kept me up at night, but I knew there was no turning back. The search for Mark had become the search for ourselves, and whatever we found next would shape the rest of our lives. The more we searched, the more the shadows seemed to grow. Detective Harris's discoveries had given us hope, but they also brought a new kind of fear. Every clue pointed to something bigger than just a missing person. It was as if Mark's disappearance was only the tip of an iceberg, and what lay beneath was colder and more dangerous than I'd ever imagined. One afternoon, Harris called with a voice that sounded different, sharper, more urgent. "Anna, I need you to come down to the station. There's something you need to see." My heart raced as Emily and I drove through the rain, the windshield wipers beating a nervous rhythm. When we arrived, Harris was waiting with a file in his hand and a look that told me things were about to change. He laid out the evidence on the table: old business records, emails, and a photo of a man I recognized from Mark's past, Victor. I remembered Victor as Mark's business partner, a man who always seemed to be hiding something behind his smile. Harris explained that Victor had just been released from prison, and there were signs he'd been in town the night Mark disappeared. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces started to fit together in a way that made my skin crawl. Had Mark gotten mixed up in something dangerous? Was Victor the reason he vanished? Before I could ask more, Harris slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a note, written in shaky handwriting. "Stop looking, or you'll regret it." My hands trembled as I read the words. Someone knew we were getting close. Someone wanted us to stop. I looked at Emily, her face pale but determined. I wanted to protect her, to keep her safe from whatever darkness we were stirring up, but I could see in her eyes that she wouldn't back down. She needed answers just like I did. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside made me jump. I checked the locks twice, then 3 times. I kept thinking about Victor, about the threat, about how close we might be to the truth, and how much danger that might bring. Emily tried to act brave, but I saw her flinch when the phone rang or a car drove by too slowly. The fear was real, and it was growing. Harris called again the next day. "We can't stop now," he said. "But you both need to be careful. Victor is dangerous, and he knows you're looking for answers." His words sent a chill through me. I realized that the threat wasn't just in the past, it was here now, and it was real. I thought about Mark, about the choices he might have made to protect us, and I wondered if I was strong enough to do the same for Emily. Emily insisted on helping, even though I wanted to keep her out of harm's way. "Dad would want us to know the truth," she said, her voice steady. I nodded, even though my heart was pounding. We were in deeper than ever, and there was no turning back. The shadows from the past were closing in, and I knew that whatever we found next would change everything. But I couldn't help but wonder, what if the truth was more dangerous than the lies? What if, by searching for Mark, we were putting ourselves in the same danger that made him disappear? And what would happen if Victor found us before we found the answers? The questions circled in my mind, each one darker than the last, as we prepared to face whatever secrets the past was hiding. The days after the threat felt like walking on a tightrope, every step more dangerous than the last. I kept looking over my shoulder, wondering if Victor was watching us, waiting for the right moment to strike. Emily tried to act brave, but I saw the worry in her eyes. Detective Harris was more cautious, too. He checked in with us every day, making sure we were safe, but I could tell he was planning something. The sense of danger was everywhere, and I knew we were getting close to the heart of the mystery. One evening, Harris called with a plan. "Anna, I think it's time we set a trap for Victor," he said. His voice was steady, but I could hear the urgency underneath. "He wants you to stop looking, but if we make him think you're about to find something important, he might come out of hiding." My stomach twisted with fear, but I knew he was right. We couldn't keep running forever. If we wanted answers, we had to face Victor head-on. We decided to meet at the old park where Mark and Victor used to talk business. Harris would be nearby, ready to step in if things got out of control. I was the bait, and the thought made my hands shake, but I tried to stay calm for Emily's sake. She wanted to come, but I made her promise to stay with Harris, just in case. I hugged her tight before I left, whispering, "No matter what happens, I love you." She nodded, her eyes shining with worry and hope. The park was quiet, the sun setting behind the trees. I sat on a bench, pretending to look through old papers, my heart pounding so loudly I thought Victor would hear it from a mile away. Minutes felt like hours. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, and there he was, Victor, older but just as cold as I remembered. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You should have left it alone, Anna," he said, his voice low and threatening. "Mark did what he had to do. He disappeared to protect you and your daughter. But you just couldn't let it go, could you?" My breath caught in my throat. Was it true? Had Mark really left to keep us safe? Or was Victor just trying to scare me? Victor stepped closer, his eyes hard. Mark found out about things he shouldn't have. He was going to testify, put a lot of people in jail, including me.
So he ran.
But I never stopped looking for him. And now you're making the same mistake. My hands shook, but I forced myself to stay strong. "Where is he, Victor? What did you do to him?" I demanded. Before Victor could answer, Harris appeared from the shadows, his badge flashing. "That's enough, Victor. You're under arrest." Victor tried to run, but Harris was faster. In seconds, Victor was in handcuffs, shouting threats and warnings. My knees went weak with relief and fear. It was over, or so I thought. Harris turned to me, his face serious. "He confessed, Anna. Mark disappeared to protect you. But Victor's been hunting him ever since. We have a lead on where Mark might be." My heart raced with a new kind of hope and dread. After all these years, was Mark really alive? What would we find if we followed this new trail? And could our family ever be whole again after everything we've been through? As we left the park, I held Emily close, my mind spinning with questions. The confrontation was over, but the biggest mystery of all was still waiting for us. What would we discover when we finally found Mark? And would the truth bring us together, or tear us apart for good? The days after Victor's arrest felt like living in a dream I couldn't wake up from. For years, I had imagined every possible ending to Mark's story, some hopeful, some heartbreaking, but nothing prepared me for the moment Detective Harris called and said, "We found him, Anna. Mark is alive." My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the phone. Emily was beside me, her eyes wide with hope and fear. After all this time, we were finally going to see him again. But what would we find? Would Mark even want to see us? And could we ever be a family after everything that had happened? Harris explained that Mark had been living under a new name in a small town far away. He'd changed his appearance, kept to himself, and never reached out. Not even once. The thought stung, but Harris reminded me, he did it to protect you. Victor was dangerous, and Mark believed staying away was the only way to keep you safe. I tried to hold on to that, but the pain of all those lost years pressed down on me. Emily squeezed my hand, her voice barely a whisper. "Are you ready, Mom?" I nodded, even though I wasn't sure I ever could be. The drive to Mark's new town was quiet. Emily stared out the window, lost in her own thoughts, while I tried to prepare myself for what was coming. My heart raced with every mile. What would I say to him? Would he recognize us? Would he even want us in his new life? The questions circled in my mind, each one heavier than the last. When we finally arrived, Harris led us to a small house at the end of a quiet street. My legs felt like jelly as I walked up the steps. I knocked, my hand trembling. The door opened slowly, and there he was, older, thinner, his hair streaked with gray, but still Mark. For a moment, none of us spoke. The silence was thick with everything we'd lost and everything we still hoped for. Mark's eyes filled with tears as he looked at Emily, then at me. "Anna." "Emily," his voice broke, and suddenly, all the anger and sadness I'd carried for years came rushing out. "Why, Mark? Why did you leave us? Why didn't you trust me?" My voice shook with pain and relief, and 1,000 other feelings I couldn't name. Mark stepped back, his face crumpling. "I thought it was the only way. Victor threatened you. I couldn't risk your lives. I wanted to come back every day, but I was so afraid."
"I'm sorry."
"I'm so sorry." Emily started to cry, and I pulled her close. The three of us stood there, tangled in tears and memories, not sure what to do next. The reunion was messy, full of anger, relief, and heartbreak. Mark tried to explain, but the words didn't fix the years we'd lost. I wanted to scream at him, to hug him, to run away and never look back. Emily asked the questions I couldn't. Did you ever think about us? Did you ever want to come home? Mark nodded, tears streaming down his face. Every single day. But I thought you'd be safer without me. I realized then that forgiveness wasn't something that happened all at once. It was a choice I'd have to make over and over if we were ever going to heal. I looked at Mark, at Emily, and at the broken pieces of our family. We had found the truth, but now we had to decide what to do with it. As we left Mark's house that day, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The truth had set us free, but it had also changed us forever. Could we find our way back to each other after everything we'd been through? Or was the distance between us too great to cross? The answers weren't clear, but for the first time in years, I felt hope, real, fragile hope, that maybe, just maybe, we could begin again. The days after finding Mark were filled with a strange, quiet tension. We had spent so many years searching for answers, and now that we had them, it was like learning to walk all over again. Mark moved back to our town, but nothing felt simple. Emily and I had built a life together, just the two of us, and now we had to figure out how to let Mark back in. Some days, it felt like we were strangers living in the same house, tiptoeing around old wounds and new fears. But other days, there were small moments, Mark making Emily laugh, or the three of us sharing a meal, that made me believe we could find our way back to each other. Forgiveness didn't come easily. There were nights when I lay awake, replaying everything Mark had said, everything he had done to protect us, and everything he had left unsaid. I wanted to be angry, and sometimes I was. But I also saw the pain in Mark's eyes, the way he flinched at loud noises or looked over his shoulder, still haunted by the years in hiding. Emily struggled too. She wanted her father back, but she didn't know how to trust him. We talked a lot, sometimes through tears, sometimes through laughter, but always with honesty. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. As the weeks passed, I realized that healing wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about facing it together, even when it hurt. We started going to family counseling, learning how to talk about the hard things instead of hiding from them. Mark apologized again and again, not just with words but with actions, showing up, listening, and trying to be the father and husband we needed. Emily slowly let her guard down, and I saw glimpses of the little girl who used to wait by the window for her dad to come home. It would take time, but we were moving forward, one step at a time. Something changed in me, too. For so long, I had carried my story like a secret, afraid of what people would think. But after everything we'd been through, I realized that sharing our journey could help others who felt lost or alone. I started speaking at local support groups, telling our story honestly, the pain, the doubt, the hope, and the slow, hard work of rebuilding. People listened, and some even cried, and I saw that our story wasn't just about loss. It was about survival and the power of not giving up, even when the ending is uncertain. Mark, Emily, and I still have a long way to go. There are days when the past feels too heavy, and days when the future feels bright. But we face it together now, not as a broken family, but as people who chose to keep trying. I learned that love isn't about never leaving. It's about finding your way back, no matter how far you've gone or how much you've lost along the way. Looking back, I see that the story of our marriage wasn't just about Mark's disappearance. It was about what we did with the pain, how we found hope in the darkest places, and how we learned to forgive, not just each other, but ourselves. And as I share our story with others, I hope they see that even the deepest wounds can heal, and that sometimes the hardest journeys lead to the most unexpected new beginnings. And every year when my birthday comes around, I light a candle, close my eyes, and remember that last laugh. It's not just a memory of what I lost, but a promise of what we found, the strength to keep going and the courage to start again. If this story touched your heart and you'd like to hear more true, emotional journeys like ours, I invite you to stay connected. There are so many stories of hope, healing, and second chances waiting to be shared. If you're interested, just let me know, or follow along for more gentle, inspiring tales that remind us we're never alone, no matter what we're facing. Thank you for listening.